This Saturday, the 17th of November at 4:15, something magical is happening at Liffey Valley. Santa is coming to switch on the Christmas lights. It's going to be a wonderful day for the whole family with Christmas fun from 1 o'clock. With over 80 stores, it's the perfect place to start your Christmas shopping too. And with more than 20 restaurants, take some time to relax and treat yourself. Come and see Santa at Liffey Valley this Saturday at 4:15. Visit liffeyvalley.ie. It's the little things that make the difference.
Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball
with Air Sport, the home of rugby in Ireland. Visit airsport.ie.
Now we've got Matt Williams standing by. Evening, Matt.
Evening, Joe. How are you, mate?
Good. We are slightly shortened this evening. We've been playing the listeners back a show we did at the Olympia Theatre last night, where we had on stage Brian O'Driscoll, Alan Quinlan and Paul O'Connell, which is not a bad trio. And much of it was Alan Quinlan telling us what a weirdo and psycho Paul O'Connell was during his playing career. To which O'Connell said, I wasn't as bad as people said, although he then admitted there was a game of Monopoly against his wife, which did end with her in tears, and it was a big issue, because he said in his defence, she was selling off property at a lower than market rate value to other people to stop him winning. So
that's pretty justifiable. I always have a lovely little story about Paulie. I think I coached him in Island A once. In those days, Island A came in on Tuesday night and you played Friday. And that was the only time I ever got close to him. When I say he's such an intelligent guy, because I taught him everything he knows in those 3 days. He was head and shoulders above everyone else.
Yeah, He was very interesting talking about getting to grips with things in Stad and how he's getting on now. So that's what's been going on here. Obviously, it's New Zealand fever, as you can imagine. The whole country is pretty much looking forward to this one at this stage. Thoughts on Irish team? There's very few things up in the air now, really, given the injury situation.
I think they're pretty fortunate that almost everyone's, thereabouts. Obviously, the big one is Conor Murray not being there. But, I thought the speculation this week was pretty silly. You imagine a guy hasn't played a game in the best part of 5 months. As far as we know, he hasn't even done any contact training, and then to throw him in against the best team in the world, Conor was never going to play that game. So then it just became a few other issues, Robbie Kearney coming back and, the hamstrings and so on. It's a shame for Robbie Henshaw. I would have loved to have seen Henshaw and Ringrose in the centres. Bundyaki had a very good game last week, but his passing game probably limits the outside of the Irish attacking play a little bit. He's certainly not a passer of Robbie Henshaw, but it's still a very strong Irish side.
I mean, in fairness to Pearl Bundyaki, he's listening to people talk about Ringrose and Henshaw for well over a year now, and he's probably sitting there going, I'm the only one who's fit every time, everybody.
Well, look, he did exceptionally well in Australia, and he did exceptionally well last week. He's a power athlete, is what he is, and he's very, very good at it. He's not a second five, as we would say. He hasn't got that deft little touch and the softness of hands, but that's not the athlete he is. He still brings something that's quite abrasive. He missed a bad tackle in offset play last week, but look, he's done very well when the opportunities have been given to him.
The lads all last night, particularly Brian, who did tip New Zealand ultimately, the rest generally went for Ireland by a squeak with their heart ruling in their head, they admitted, but they said they would have been a lot more bullish if Henshaw and O'Brien and Conor Murray were there, and that's a big factor in this game, so that is a big consideration. By the same token, we have now seen South Africa, Argentina, the Lions and England all disrupt this current New Zealand team quite severely, so that would give you a bit of hope. I mean, that gap has closed. What kind of pedestal do you have this post McCaw, Carter, New Zealand team at?
They're still, in my opinion, by far the best team in the world.
Okay.
England almost, but didn't. Australia almost, but didn't. South Africa did in what was simply one of the best games of rugby you will ever see. And you have to say South Africa came out with a performance that was well above what the rest of their season had produced. They'd been beaten by Argentina and beaten by Australia, and in some people were saying Rassie Erasmus was going to New Zealand to save his job, and wow, what a game they played. You also have to remember that Barrett I think he missed 5 conversions or 5 shots at goal. I can't remember if they were all conversions or penalties, but he certainly missed 5 kicks.
Yeah.
That's not usually going to happen from a top-class New Zealand side. They're not unbeatable, but no one is. Someone's going to beat them at Eden Park one day, but not for a long time. They're still a very good side. They've had it's sort of a trite thing to roll out, Joe, because all the players at certain times of the year are tired. I really don't believe the November internationals are a true reflection on where teams are. And we only really get that honest view at a World Cup. Like the poor Argentinians, they have one professional team, the Jaguars, that played really, really well in the Super Rugby competition. Performed exceptionally well. They won. It was a breakthrough season. They made the quarters, won 2 games in New Zealand, 2 games in Australia, and beat a lot of teams at home. And then they go on the championship and they did very well again, beat South Africa and Australia and pushed New Zealand. Those guys are just shattered. They're hanging on by their fingernails.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how everyone throws it about. Everyone says, they're professional athletes. They're human beings and they're tired. The Australians are very tired and emotionally bashed up. The Kiwis are probably in better shape, but I think this will be the week that we'll see the best out of them. They had a long travel. Japan, played Australia. They left half the team behind to play Japan, came across. Pretty disrupted. Wet day at Twickenham, and surprisingly the Kiwis hate wet days. I just looked at my forecast and it is for a fine afternoon in Dublin. And I think we'll see the best of the Kiwis this week. I think they're still the best in the world. Not unbeatable, absolutely not. South Africa proved that, but still the best.
How do you think Ireland will go about things then? What's the Irish game plan for this game in broad terms?
Well, I think they'll do exactly what has been successful for them in the past year. They'll play a very limited attacking game, but it's been a very... Joe, you and I sat next to each other the last 12 months a lot. You've heard me say this, and I don't mean... I just got to say what I see. It is a highly successful and efficient way of attacking. Let me get out, put that right out there. And the thing I love about it, it's not copying New Zealand, but it's boring to watch and it's brutal. There's no joy in it, but it's efficient. And I think they will go about exactly the same plan offensively that they have done the 12 months. There won't be a change. They can't change too much this week. I don't think they'll counterattack. And I think the big question is, in those terms, what have the other teams learnt about Ireland? I'd twist this on its head. I think the Australians exposed Ireland in the second and third test in Australia when they didn't kick out. Australia kicked long. Yeah. And that denied Ireland their lineouts. But what happened was Australia, with that ill discipline, gave away that many penalties. Ireland kicked for touch and got their lineouts. But it certainly disrupted their play. You saw a kicking game from Argentina last week that was really, really intelligent. New Zealand kicked the ball more than any other team in the world. And I think their kicking game that will put pressure on Ireland to launch their attack from places they're uncomfortable with will be the key. Can Ireland cope with that kicking game from Ireland? Shane Horgan always says to me, the times that Joe Schmidt's teams lose is when they lose the kicking game. He said if they win the kicking game, they win. And Shane certainly knows what he's talking about. Since then, I've observed that, and Shag's got a good head on his shoulders, and it seems to be the truth.
Because interestingly, I was reading over the weekend that the Australian analysis of Ireland back in June, their conclusion was Ireland were pretty much the best attacking team off line-out in the world. So we're not going to give them the line-out. And not going to take too long for other countries to realise that. No,
Joe, it was a very good analysis by the Australians, and their tactics were great. But what happens when I would say it's like being in the water and you're bleeding and there's sharks around. They'll all hit you at the same spot. Everyone's noted this now. Argentina showed, and I think the New Zealanders will show it. And Rob Kearney at fullback, which I believe they'll pick, is very different to Lama, but he's very safe. And I just don't think Jordan's quite there yet. I think he's a really exciting player, and he is the future.
Yeah.
He's just a little bit out of position here and there. I think they'll pick Rob, but Rob's not a counter attacker as such. But there's no system around Rob to produce the counter attack. Whereas a lot of the other countries do have a system where the fullback catches the ball. So if you imagine where the ball is, that's where the defenders run. Where's the space? The space is away from the ball. So they have a system to shift the ball to the spaces. Ireland just don't seem to do that. And part of that is, and I'm saying this with respect to Joe, he's analysed his team and he's saying, here's our talents. This is the talents we've got. I'm going to keep my attacking system within that spectrum. I'm not going to copy someone. I'm going to do it this way. And it's been highly successful.
Yes.
Highly successful.
And I wonder, is a positive view of the, you used the word efficiency of the attacking game. It's just brutally efficient. I wonder, is the positive slant that, well, it's fairly obvious what they're doing. I mean, there's no great subtlety or secret to it. You can analyse it pretty quickly, the hard running and then going through phase after phase after phase. So you could actually say, well, it's very obvious what they're doing, and yet nobody has still managed to work out how to really stop it. So, I mean, you could kind of say, well, if there was a different kind of attack, there might be a way of slowing it down or stopping it at source, or doing, there might be a trickery involved. There's no real trickery, if I'm following what you're saying about the Irish attack as such. So there's almost an element of, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, and you still won't really be able to stop it because we're so good at it.
That's pretty much what's happened, hasn't it? They certainly, there hasn't been a change in their play from when they took the ball forward in the first game of the Six Nations against France, when they were behind, when they caught the ball off that quick 20, off the 22 just on full time, and they took the ball forward in a relentless fashion to set up Johnny Sexton's drop goal. Nothing's changed. They haven't really deviated from that, and it's been successful. But their winning margins have just won all their games, and that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
But there comes a time when that won't work. And I think on a dry day against New Zealand, the question is that going to produce enough points? That's the unknown.
Yeah. We are talking here with Thanks to Air Sport, the home of rugby in Ireland, and most people, whichever way they're leaning, are putting it at about a score the difference, Matt. So are you falling into that category, and what way do you see it going?
No, I'm not, Joe. Look, I really hate predicting because there's just so many variables in the game, and someone will come up to you, after, oh, you said this, you said that, and you go, well, I'm not a mind reader. I can only tell you what I see. Yeah, and you don't even have the teams yet, to be fair to you either. Yeah, exactly. But I don't think. Look, I just think there's a couple of other parts to this, Joe. That I find it's really funny, mate, because I don't live in Ireland. When I come back into Ireland and do talk with everyone like yourself in the media, I'm quite surprised about the bubble that is Irish rugby. And a lot of the same conversations seem to go, and I think sometimes I think, oh, God, have I missed something? Am I really saying the right thing here? And sometimes I always find myself being the bad guy, and I certainly hate doing that because I love Irish rugby and I'm deeply respectful for what Irish rugby's given me in my life. But I just think there's a little air of entitlement about the place at the moment, that all of a sudden we're entitled to beat New Zealand. We're entitled to these things. And I'm sort of going, geez, that's when you get that air, that's trouble. Like, the New Zealanders are coming to Ireland with one intent, and that is to, with the greatest respect and humility that the New Zealanders do carry themselves with, and pride, and I've got nothing but respect for the way the New Zealand rugby players carry themselves and speak in public. They are true gentlemen. But they are coming here to jam it down Irish throats. Chicago does not sit well with them. I've heard that firsthand. I've heard it from New Zealand players when I was in New Zealand last year. And not that they were coming here then, but they were very unhappy with the result in Chicago. And I believe they're coming here with intent, and this is their big game on tour, not England, Ireland. And they got away with the English game, but I think they are very, very focused on putting in an excellent performance at the Aviva on Saturday. And I think New Zealand will prove what they are. That's the best team on the planet.
Yeah.
And let me push that another way. I think that if New Zealand do that, it could be the best gift to Irish rugby leading up to the World Cup, because Ireland haven't lost a game in a long, long time. Everyone's getting a little bit ahead of themselves. And I just think there needs to be a little grounding here for the good of the World Cup, because no matter which way we cut this up, Joe, the World Cup's that's the big prize. You know, like, who cares about November internationals? This is about getting prepared for this. And the Southern Hemisphere teams understand this a little bit more than the North. So even if Ireland win the result, what Ireland learn from this game to improve their performance at the World Cup, that's going to be the real value in the 80 minutes at the Aviva.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think that ties in with the ambition of the side, because certainly 5-10 years ago, just beating New Zealand, especially for the first time at home in the context of this game, would be enough. You know, that is a standalone thing, and that would be enough to make DVDs for the next 5 years every Christmas on the back of. But I guess it is about the World Cup now, because there's a point in from Tom, even as the Heineken Star comment point would just come in, and he says, lads, feel free to completely shut me down here, but does anybody else think that we might be better off losing this Saturday? And thinking of the World Cup 2019, nobody beats the All Blacks twice in a row. I sort of take his point here. I mean, the flip side is maybe it's psychologically important to beat them, so you have that sense of belief going into the World Cup. Do you think, are you almost even saying as well, like, a defeat against the All Blacks would cool down the hype, which is no bad thing, but also might prompt a certain re-examination of, well, what else? Where else can this team improve? And, you know, almost if you beat the All Blacks, then you kind of think, right, we're good, we're set, we have our house in order.
Joe, I think that's 100% correct. I don't know if you learn a lot from losing, apart from that you hate it.
Yeah.
But Ireland haven't lost for so long. A little resetting doesn't hurt you. This is not the World Cup. The World Cup is coming up. New Zealand are on the Irish side of the draw. There is going to be a game. It will, consider all things being equal, there is going to be a game somewhere where you're going to hit New Zealand. And you have to go about New Zealand in a certain way. We also have to forget Chicago. Chicago's the past. It was great. It was wonderful. That was another New Zealand side. They had a lot of people out. Doesn't matter. They won the game. It's like Munster beating the All Blacks in the 70s. That's over. You know, like, who cares? Same. Australia beat New Zealand regularly, but this year's been a disaster. It's what is happening now. And there's no harm in it. I think the other point being that entitlement is, if that entitlement is felt around the nation, that's failure. You have to fight like you would not believe to get a victory against New Zealand. I was very privileged in the early 90s to be a very, very minor player, helping at some Australian camps as a very young coach, learning, literally an assistant, not no title or anything like that, in the lead up to some Bledisloe Cups when Australia won. And the intensity of the thinking, the intensity of the process was far beyond any other test match I've ever experienced or witnessed or been part of. You truly have to go to a level you haven't been before to beat these guys. And Australia beating New Zealand in those days set them up for a World Cup win in 99. There's no doubt about it. And 91 probably as well.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be a given. It's not an entitlement. It's not easy. And if Ireland play even like the best they played last season against England in the first half, they'll have a shot. Anything below that, they'll fail.
Yeah. To be fair, I think, I don't know who you're getting the entitlement from. I do think there is a general sense here that this will still be very difficult, and I would say most people, hand on heart, realise you kind of have to make the All Blacks slight favourites in a game like this. And even if we were all losing the run of ourselves within camp, you suspect they know what it's all about. But to sum up then, to surmise, the line that jumped out at me from this whole conversation was, you expect an excellent performance from New Zealand. So that's the marker, that's the kind of scary thing, that they're going to come with their A game, and so then we're really going to see where we are. And if New Zealand have their A game, there's a reason they're the best team in the world. That's kind of your feeling. Yeah.
When the top New Zealand sides, as in even the Crusaders and the national team of New Zealand, put their mind to it, they have a day where they're not relaxed. I'm not taking anything away from the South African performance, but they performed very poorly in the championship, and the week before they performed pretty poorly against Australia. And I think the New Zealanders were a bit relaxed. And what happened was they didn't have that performance that they required. If they've got their A game on, it's going to be a very, very tough day at the office for Ireland.
It'll be compelling viewing either way, Matt, so I'm sure we'll talk to you next week at some stage. Thanks a million.
Pleasure, Joe. Thanks. It was great to see you, mate.
Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Air Sport. Watch every Munster and Leinster game only on the Air Sport pack. Visit airsport.ie.
Join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. Future Proof.
The Future Proof podcast is changing. All it means is that you'll have more wow moments, more amazing facts, and more of this type of thing happening in your podcast feed from now on.
You know what? At some point in the history of doing this podcast, you might have told me that people can hear that, because I've been just repeating